Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. It's very kind of you to accommodate us. This is Ramadan, you're fasting, and I deeply appreciate your presence here. It's been about 14 months that we last met, and a lot has happened. We as American Muslims have looked at the Malaysian model as something which we have all been very proud of. And now there is a series of crises, or at least the perception. So I want to draw on you to reflect on some of these problems. Let's look at the economic quote-unquote crisis that you're managing. How do you assess your progress? You took a completely independent stand compared to your neighbors, and I want to see how you have...
Well, in the first place, our situation is different from that of our neighbors. Whereas our neighbors have had to resort to asking the IMF for help, which of course placed them under the IMF conditions, and they're not quite free to take action on their own. We have had no need to ask the IMF for help, and therefore we are much more free to take action. Our economy was, of course, going down because of the currency trading and the pressures being put on us. But we decided to impose currency controls, a very limited currency control designed specifically to prevent currency traders from having access to our currency and trading in the currency. Therefore, they cannot devalue our currency anymore. Once we remove ourselves from their grip, we are able to do things within the country which revives the economy, like, for example, lowering the interest rate, like ensuring that our trade can go on using currencies of our choice. And also for the stock market, we impose a condition that any foreign investment into this country must stay in this country for 1 year, which will prevent the kind of speculative short selling that destroys the stock market.
So you see these measures as more or less short-term needs of your country?
We have always been open in the past,
yes.
But then in those days we were not attacked. But now we find that the international system allows these unscrupulous attacks by speculators on the economies of countries, which results in a total destruction of such economies. So until there is some international control over such activities, we cannot remove controls ourselves. We have imposed this control to protect ourselves. The international community must now stop these attacks by imposing conditions on currency trading, on stock market speculation. Then when they do that, we'll go back.
You have actually alluded to in one of your statements that this is an example of economic imperialism. Do you still believe that that is the situation, or
yes,
who do you feel is responsible for this kind?
When you devalue a currency, you impoverish the whole country, all the people. When people are impoverished, they have a need to seek for help. When they ask for help, those people who are supposed to help them impose conditions which include direction over their economy and even direction over their politics. Leaders have been removed, governments have been overthrown, through this action, and therefore there is economic imperialism, because now these countries can hardly take independent action. Anything that they do, they must consult or they must take directive from an international organization like the IMF. When you do that, of course, you have lost your independence.
So you believe that it is a form of control that that IMF and these kind of monetary organizations exercise over developing economies. Is that your?
Yes, obviously they have, they want to gain control, and when they gain control, they design policies and actions that benefit the investors and the businesses from the rich countries. The end result, of course, we will lose all our banks, we will lose all our businesses, because they have been devalued and bought cheaply by foreign giants.
Yes, but on the other hand now, so in other words, you also, are you suggesting that the IMF also is in need of some reforms?
Oh yes, I think the IMF has taken has given very bad advice. For example, when America and now Britain is facing an economic problem, their advice was to lower interest rate. In our case, the advice is to increase interest rate. It seems that if you increase interest rate, then the money will not be available to currency traders. But it has proven that increases in interest rate does not affect the currency traders, but it does affect the businesses in the country. People just cannot borrow money, cannot do business, cannot make any profit.
Even in the West, though, this whole notion with the recent debacle of the hedge fund, I believe your own policies are being looked at more closely. How do you feel about that? I mean, is there a validation of what you've said there, or do you should feel?
Well, I would like to claim that there is a validation, but one has to remember that their problem arose from a different situation, where their investment company lost money. In our case, it's not an investment company, the whole nation lost money.
Yes.
You see, so they are looking at it from their angle. How do they continue to make money through their hedge funds and their banks? For us, it's different. We are not interested in helping their hedge funds or their banks. We are interested in protecting our economy.
But in the steps that you're taken, now the West talks about the policies that you have instituted as examples of quote-unquote cronyism and the usual criticisms that.
Well, they will call it cronyism, of course, because it is good for them. But what we do here is to help our nationals. To them, there is no cronyism if we favor them. If we give all the business opportunities to them, then that is not cronyism. If we give business opportunities to our own people, that is cronyism. It doesn't matter who our own people are, but anybody at all who are locals, if they get an opportunity, then that opportunity must have been due to cronyism. The only way to stop, of course, is to turn over everything to them, to their investors, to their big companies.
But some of the bailouts that they point out in terms of some of the banks and some major investments related to your family, there is always that talk to tarnish one's performance or reputation.
But this is misrepresentation, misreporting. There is no bailout, and I don't help my family. But on the other hand, it is very clear when LTCM got into trouble, these bankers who have investment in the LTCM actually used their own bank's money to bail out LTCM. Why is it that they don't focus on that as a case of cronyism?
Do you think that with the present set of reforms you have in place, you will see a continued uncertainty or rise of unemployment, or all the other crises, meaning the banking crisis and the debt crisis, which all of the other Southeast Asian countries are faced with?
We don't have a problem of unemployment. Yeah, right from the beginning, we had 2 million foreign workers in a country with 20 million people. Now that we have this problem, there has been some retrenchment, numbering about a few thousand. Nothing compared to the workforce that we have. Our unemployment rate is still below 4%, which means full employment. That is not a problem. As far as our money is concerned, we have sufficient money, so much so that we don't have to borrow. When the Moody and Standard & Poor deliberately downgraded us in order to prevent us from borrowing money abroad, that does not affect us because we have sufficient money and we can raise the money within the country.
So you do not think that the average Malaysian who has seen the devaluation of the ringgit and who has seen the flourishing society that was unfolding during the last 17 years almost coming to an abrupt end is being affected by this?
Well, it is affected by the currency being devalued, by the attack on the share market. Naturally, even the strongest company in America or in Europe, if their share prices is reduced to 10% of its market value, it will go bankrupt. That is what they did to our share market. They sold down the shares until all our companies were almost bankrupt. But now they cannot do it, and our companies are recovering. We will not recover and grow the same way as before simply because our trading partners are no longer strong. They can't buy what we have to sell them. But our balance of payment is very healthy.